Welcome, everybody. I am your host, Brendan. Welcome to podcast number 15. That's 1 to 5 for those counting at home. We are happy that you joined us. This is your after Christmas special, as we would like to put it. We're going to put some warmth into your heart on this very cool Christmas season. I'm joined by my two favorites. Todd Lemieux, how are you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm fantastic. I had to take a break from watching the war that's currently going on between the Hallmark Channel and the Great American Network for who can portray the most actors who do not know how to convey that they're not actually holding any liquid in their cup of coffee. It's a pet peeve. It's a pet peeve of mine. You watch those movies and every actor's holding an empty cup and throwing it around and then pretending to drink from it. There's no dedication to their craft.
Yeah, so Todd, I hate you triggered something there where I watched a person in those movies have a cup of coffee with whipped cream foam at the top and a straw, and it never moved. It was obviously plastic cream on plastic coffee because it was identical, the whole scene long. And so when you said that, I had to laugh. We really need to get a life before that's what we're doing. When can we get baseball going again?
Well, if people would like and subscribe to the podcast more, then we would actually spend time watching baseball rather than watching Hallmark and Great American Network and rubbing our wives' feet.
Oh, this is taking a turn. I'm glad you're here, Todd. Thanks for that. And also joining us.
Glad to be a part of it.
Also joining us, Dad. How are you today? How was the Christmas festivities?
It was absolutely wonderful. It was magic. The Diamondbacks actually did something. Somebody woke them up and said, hey, and they traded a young, talented guy over to Toronto and got two highly regarded young, talented guys back. I think it was a good trade. We'll see. Nobody's ever heard of any of the three people, but you may. I then read that the minor league pitcher who led all the minors in strikeouts belongs to the Diamondbacks. So I said, well, maybe we're turning a corner where we can get to 81 wins. That would be nice to see 500 percentage, but we're working on it one day at a time.
In that division, you get 20 wins against Colorado, so you just got to find 60 more. So for those at home who don't know, the Diamondbacks are a professional team, and they do professional things like trade players to Toronto. Now, Toronto's trying to compete with the Yankees, not with Boston, because Boston gave up already. Sorry, Boston fans. And so that's good to hear. I liked the move that the Diamondbacks made. Again, they cannot fight with the Giants, the Dodgers, nor can they fight with the Padres. So they will simply be the scrappy team that's looking for young talent before they get bought away by somebody else or traded away. The good news is we still have Bumgarner, and he has not gotten hurt in a rodeo incident, so I believe he'll be ready to pitch next year for us, all things considered. Right, Dan?
News headline, Corey Kluber signed with the Red Sox today.
I was going to say, it's not like the Red Sox have given up.
Oh, man, the Red Sox. Hey, that means, guess what you get? Wasn't there a fountain in New York or in Boston where you throw coins into it?
That's in Rome.
Oh, well, I guess
it's not even close.
Well, I'm
Sure you're going for Boston, and it's literally on the other side of the planet.
When you go to a Boston game this year and you watch them, you should be able to throw coins on the field to make wishes, because that's all the team's going to be, is one giant wishing well. Because they ain't going to perform. Corey hasn't performed in many, many moons. He certainly won't perform.
Yeah, they also go. Well, they got Justin Turner.
They did.
Yeah, so you have
they released Eric Hosmer.
And the Colorado Rockies picked him up yet?
Uh-huh.
Did they get Brandon Belt? So the Colorado Rockies are still not picking up any of the trash. Hey,
there's still opportunities out there.
Like Todd got the tin of popcorn from Steve Cohen. The Rockies just sent out trash buckets with the Colorado Rockies logo on it to all their fans who were season tickets holders and said, hey, we're going to be crap again. Here's your trash can. You can just get ready for it. Bring it to the game. You know how they bring your dog to the ballpark? It's a pretty popular event for Colorado. You could bring your custom trash can to the game. and then they should give him tobacco and make it like a spitting bowl. Make the Colorado Rockies fans really delightful. All right, so this is the 15th podcast. It's pretty awesome. We get to talk about baseball offseason moves, money spent, and owners who actually care versus owners who just want to move. But before we get into all that fun stuff, Dad, are you ready for the one, the only story time? As I certainly am.
Story time.
I look forward to the story this time and how I can insult a third of the populace. Please, Father. Looking forward.
All right, today's story is a personal story wrapped inside baseball. And the date I'm referring to is May 31st, 1964. May 31st, 1964, I found myself with my whole family in a town in New York State called Olean, New York. Olean, you have to find it on the map, is in the southwestern part of the state. It's equally distant from Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Ohio. So it's way down there. The reason we were there is my brother was graduating from college at St. Bonaventure University. Now, what's this got to do with baseball? We had to go home. And so sometime on Sunday afternoon, my two sisters, my mother, and I climbed in my father's car to travel what amounts to over a 7-hour trip in a car, with the only form of entertainment being an AM radio connected to an antenna in his car. And my sisters about died when my father found a baseball game on the radio. Oh no, baseball. But this wasn't just baseball. This was the Mets against the Giants. My father was a New York Giants fan when they moved to San Francisco. He followed them until the National League returned to New York in 1962, and he got on board with the Mets. However, in 1964, the Mets had never, there were 10 teams in the National League. The Mets never smelled ninth place. They finished 15 games behind the ninth place team, and the second year, 13 games behind. This was their third year, and they were already, even in May, firmly grasping last place. Now, Giants had a good team. They had 3 Hall of Fame batters, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Orlando Cepeda. They had a Hall of Fame pitcher named Juan Marichal. So we knew the Giants were going to win. It's just be interesting to listen to it. And my sisters about died when they told us it was a doubleheader. But the good news was the first game was already done. The Giants had beat the Mets 5-3 in 2 hours and 29 minutes, typical length of a baseball game back then. So, and the second game had started. So my father and I said to them, relax, in a couple hours this thing will be done. The Giants will beat the Mets, and my father and I will enjoy the game. Well, it started off fine in our prediction. At the end of 3 innings, the Giants were ahead 6-1. But these Mets were an incredible team. They were one of the most creative in losing. They would make their fans think that they might win. And sure enough, this day they did that. 2 runs, bottom of the 7th, it's 6-3, and some no-name guy, it's a 3-run homer, and it's 6-6 going into the 8th inning. Now, we know they're going to lose. And my sisters right now are, oh no. The Mets get them out in the 8th. So now a run, and maybe they'll win. They never hit the ball out of the infield. 1, 2, 3. 9th inning, Giants come up. Surely the Giants will score. No, they don't score. Another opportunity for the Mets. Nah, that didn't happen. 10th inning. Giants go out. Mets can't score. The Giants have a third-year middle reliever pitching, and they don't want to bring anybody else in because they don't want to blow out the arm. So they got this guy no one's heard of pitching against the Mets. It's a great opportunity, except the Mets bullpen is all no names. And they also are in a situation where they can't bring anybody else in. And they got some guy named Larry Bernarth pitching. 11th inning, no runs. 12th inning, no runs. My sisters are about ready to have a revolution. And when the 13th inning went 0-0, they were just screaming, "Stop the car, stop the car." And then I said, wait a minute. 14th inning, the Giants have 2 men on, nobody out, Orlando Cepeda at the plate. This is the end of the game, right? The Giants manager calls a hit and run. Cepeda hits a line drive to the second baseman. Triple play. The Mets get a triple play. And my father and I said, it's karma. They got to win now. Bottom of the 14th, they don't hit the ball out of the infield. Now the girls are saying, if you don't stop the car, we're going to start breaking things. So my father conceded. He stopped. We bought gas. We ate. And I'm thinking to myself, we're never going to know who won this game. Because back then, you didn't have news on all the time. We'll get on, some music will be on. We won't know who won. We get back in the game. Car. My father turns on the radio. It's the Mets announcer. We're going to the 18th inning. Nothing. Nothing for the Giants. Nothing for the Mets. And now my father tells the family, be quiet. This is baseball history. Okay, baseball history. 9th inning, 19th inning, nothing. 20th, 21st, nothing. 22nd, nothing. The Mets bullpen has not allowed a run since the 3rd inning. They've pitched this is the Mets. Bullpen has pitched 19 shutout innings, and it's still 6-6. Well, it all came crashing down in the 23rd when the Mets and Giants got 2 runs and then got the Mets out. The Giants won 8-6. After the game, the announcer comes on. This game lasted 7 hours and 30 minutes. To date, the longest game time-wise in the history of baseball. Now, since then, it's been defeated, but that at the time was the longest. But this was a doubleheader. The game started at 1 in the afternoon with game 1, and it ended at 25 to midnight, the second game.
Oh, God.
By that time, most of the fans had gone home. The concessions were completely sold out. The few fans that were there changed their chant from "Let's go Mets." They were chanting, "Let's go home." This was the craziest game ever. By the way, that Giants reliever who pitched 10 or 11 shutout innings, his name was Gaylord Perry.
Ah.
He ended up being a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he said 2 things about that game. First of all, it convinced the manager that he could start, and Gaylord Perry never relieved again the rest of his career. He was a Hall of Fame starter. The second thing, which he admitted after he retired, he used that game to further perfect his spitball, which he used his whole career. So all these great historic things happened, and in the car, the second game ended as we were pulling into the house. And to this day, my sisters have psychological damage that my father inflicted on them. A 7-hour trip, 1 baseball game. But that's historically what happens. I could tell you one other thing. I think that it says here, there's only been 8 games in the history of baseball that went over 22 innings. Todd, your Mets have been in 3 of them, and they've lost all 3, including a 24-inning game in Houston that they lost 1-0 on a shortstop error in the bottom of the 24th to bring in the only run. So that's the way it is. That's the way it was. And May 31st, 1964, a day in baseball history and the Lemieux family history.
Actually, it sounds like a Hallmark movie. It's really long. You can't get out of it. And you just know by the end you're going to be disappointed. That's what...
Baseball's the only sport that theoretically can go on forever.
It's the best. It's the best because I always felt like when I was a kid, Dad, and we would go to Montreal for the Expo games, if we caught a doubleheader, I just always felt like we were getting more bang for our buck there. It was like you paid for one and you just happened to catch two because of a rainout.
At the end of the 18th inning, the Mets announcer told the fans they've now witnessed 3 games.
Well, yeah.
And we're still going.
You know what's funny is I'm looking at the stats for this game. Willie Mays had 11 plate appearances in that game and had 1 hit.
Did you notice in that game, Willie Mays was moved to shortstop?
Yeah. He was moved to shortstop. Yeah.
They ran out of players and they needed him to play shortstop.
They had Matty Alou go to center field.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It's wild because you get games like that where that type of thing happens. You know, it's fantastic.
In the end, the Mets still lost, which we knew was going to happen 7 hours before.
Just exhausting. When did they play the next day?
I didn't read that. The Mets, was it one of the teams? I was the Mets or the Giants had to go to Williamsport to play a practice game. And they're like, no players wanted to go. I think it was the Mets.
Oh.
The Mets brought up a rookie named Ed Kranepool.
Yeah.
He played all 32 innings of the day. The day before, when he was in the minors, he had played a doubleheader also. So he had played like 5 or 6 games in 2 days.
Wow.
Those games are wild. That's just what a great story. Just sit in the car to know you can nestle in and you get 7 hours of baseball for that drive. And you got to stop and then continue the game.
When you go on the internet, there's a whole bunch of people from New York who write in and tell you where they were during that game, and what they did. They listened to it or they were at the game. One guy's dad promised his wife they'd go out to dinner after the game. He ended up taking her out to breakfast someplace.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, and then the amount of entertainment possibilities you had in the car. I'm sure seatbelts were optional.
No, there were no seatbelts.
You drove across the whole state, right?
Yep.
You said Bill Wakefield got the loss, you said?
It's a story about him, too. No, he didn't get the loss. Bill Wakefield started for the Mets and pitched 2 innings.
Yeah.
And he stated that the rest of the game, he and another guy who were out of the game went and sat in different areas of the stadium just to see what the view was like. And they watched the last 4 innings sitting in the announcer's booth because it was comfortable.
Well, sure. Wakefield, so the next game they played, at least at the National League, they played the Colt 45s on June 2nd. And Bill Wakefield won that game.
See?
He started the next game. They probably said, listen, you only had 2 innings of work. You might as well go out and earn your keep.
Probably told him they weren't going to pull him no matter what he did. He was going to pitch the whole game.
Oh, man. Such a different era, different time. Different altogether. What a wild story. And then your sister was remembered to this day, and your mother was probably a trooper.
Yes, she was. I don't remember her getting violent, but my 2 sisters, that was a different story.
Well, you were in the cheap seats with them. And you were the only one.
Yeah, she sat in the front seat. I sat between my sisters. And all I heard was, yeah. Baseball's so bad.
And this is why Jerome Lemieux has a brick outside Citi Field.
I hate the Mets.
It's so good.
Speaking of the Mets, in 2023 season for the Mets, they keep trying to sign more players, which is fantastic. Again, hats off to the ownership of the Mets. I don't think it's good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's fantastic that a owner is actually going after it and signing players. What is happening with Carlos? Is Carlos? I've read he's done. I read he's good. I read he's not good. I read he can't pass this test. I think he needs another doctor. I don't quite understand the nuances of what we're talking about. Is the insurances will not give him a break on the insurance? What is the You're in Metville, Todd. I don't quite understand what's happening with Carlos.
Well, listen, I got to give a shout out to at GENY Mets, who I follow on Twitter. He's got some pretty good stuff. The Genie Mets report. What he's saying right now is that both sides have pretty much gone radio silent. They've kind of tucked in, and they're just kind of working on hammering out a deal. Think about it this way, and gentlemen, I'll put this to you. If you're Correa and you're Scott Boras, how badly do you need this deal to work with the Mets? I would think pretty badly. I mean, Dad, are you signing this guy after he's rejected for medical reasons from 2 teams?
Well, not for 10 or 12 years.
No, not for the...
He might get a 5-year deal from somebody, but he's not going to get anything like he was expecting.
Brendan?
Why are they going after so many years? Is it because they wanted, the agent wants it, Carlos wants it, Correa wants it?
I think that's Boras, right?
Okay, so
I think what's his next stop? The Texas Rangers?
That's how he gets to 325 or 350 million. You just have to put a lot of years in there.
Right.
I mean, if this is his last deal based on what they're looking at, I just don't...
Right.
What are they saying he's medically having issues with? Or have they even reported it? I heard it was back. I heard it was a knee.
No, he has a shin bone that was broken in 2014 when he got caught in a bag legging out a triple in the minor leagues. Okay. When the shin bone broke, there was apparently ligament damage that had to be repaired. So the concern is, and we didn't know how serious the Giants were taking, because obviously the ownership and the teams can't talk about this, because the players' union is going to say, why are you jeopardizing this player's career by sharing medical information when the guy hasn't signed a contract yet, right? So you don't want somebody kind of peeing in the pool, so to speak. So all you're hearing are like basically what's leaking out and essentially what's happening during the medical. And I would imagine is that this leg is probably going to affect his durability going up to age 40. Like maybe they're saying, this leg is not going to last without some surgical repair that's going to require that he miss a season, doing rehab. He's going to require the equivalent of Tommy John to replace a ligament that's going to be worn down because it was already surgically repaired. And so we see that like Bryce Harper is going to miss most of the season for Philadelphia next year because he's having Tommy John surgery. I don't know what that means for a lower leg injury. I don't know, what the story is there. Can the guy play? Absolutely. But you certainly don't want to be paying $30 million to a guy who's guaranteed to miss a season because he's going to have surgery on a leg, especially when you're a team that lost David Wright at age 34, that has a history of guys that just don't finish out contracts. Robinson Cano, who they're still paying, $20 million this year. So that's, I can understand being a little bit cautious on this thing.
Is it an insurance thing too? Because I would imagine you could have an insurance on a contract of David Wright because there was no history of the back. And then the other thing that I wonder with is because the injury occurred in the minor leagues, does he have any kind of legal standing to go against the organization that fixed it to begin with? Because I would imagine the team fixed his leg if they did a good job or a bad job. Obviously, they're reading some things medically that they're not liking. I think that's the other play that he would have with his agent. You can go back and look at that and see what lawyers want to look at, those items to see what they go back as. But I would think a 6-year deal would make more sense. But if you're Correa, I just 28 years old. Yeah. You go 6 years, you're 35, 34 years old.
I'm sure he's looking at this as his final contract, and that he wants to get as much as he can. And he was counting on 325, and I read that he doesn't want to compromise at all, but I don't think he's got a choice.
Yeah, he's got no leverage right now. You can't go back on the team that fixed it because, those leg injuries, that's not going to be fixed permanently. What are you going to say? Listen, we rebuilt your leg and we don't have to do any maintenance on it, with the stress that you're putting on as an athlete. I don't know. I think that's a stretch. I think that's a stretch.
And it's a totally different situation when the Diamondbacks got rid of Max Scherzer. They didn't want to sign him because of his throwing motion. They immediately said he's going to have all sorts of issues with his back, his arm, all sorts of issues. They just didn't trust the fact. And again, he's played all throughout his career, has not had any issues with his arm, knock on wood. But to me, the way that I look at this is something that happened, and there's caution. But has he had any issues with this leg while playing? I don't think he's had any issues with the leg.
No, and that's why I think it's like when you're doing the medical on it, you're looking at it and you're looking at the wear and tear on it, and you're saying there's no way this thing is lasting 12 years. It's not like you're not going to get 12 years out of this ligament.
Yeah, I think this is a classic case of middle management screwing up the pie. You got a bunch of guys who are paid to tell you the downside of signing somebody versus the upside of somebody and with their ability. I think when you look at his ability and what he has, I mean, $300 million for a 12-year deal at 28 years old is crazy. For a very healthy individual, it's crazy. Like Trout has a crazy contract. Judge has a crazy contract. That's crazy to be paying someone into their late 30s as a high-performing athlete. But at the end of the day, it's happening, and you just have to embrace it. I don't know where else he could go as far as like what's the next step. He got signed by the Giants, released by the Giants, signed by the Mets, and it hasn't happened. I don't see another team that's jumping to try to give him this large of a deal. I just don't see that at this function in the free agency.
Well, technically, He's never signed with anyone because they pulled the contract before he could sign it. And I think the other thing that goes on with this, given that your medical records are confidential and protected information, I really think going into the first deal with the Giants, the only people who knew, they may have known he was injured, but the only people who knew the severity were Boras and Correa. And I don't think they believed it was a big deal. So when the Giants found that and they checked with their doctors and said, we think it's a big deal, they just thought they were crazy. And so they went on and the Mets, but then the Mets checked and said, maybe they're not so crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I don't know. I keep thinking there's a team out there who are going to swoop in and steal him, but I just can't imagine anybody coming close to making him happy.
I'm not at the $300 million mark. At all.
I would be more concerned with these players, in my opinion, based on the injuries that I've seen with these large deals. So Trout got injured sliding. He tore the ligaments on his thumb. Then he also got injured on an inside pitch. Same with Harper. These inside pitches absolutely destroy the guys who crowd the plate. Correa crowds the plate. I would be more concerned with an inside pitch destroying his wrist, his hand. This happens to all those batters on those pitches. With these guys throwing fire that they're throwing up there, and they're trying to protect the plate and brush them back a little bit. As much as you have all that gear, I mean, when Harper got hit this year, I mean, it found the one spot he didn't have anything on. And it was like, you watch any baseball and you see those inside pitches and the movement that's on these pitches, I mean, it's millimeters away from going in and hitting heads. And Stanton had that terrible, terrible injury in Miami that was just brutal to watch over and over again. So the biggest thing to me, if you're going to sign a hitter, is how do you protect them as they crowd the plate or they're inside of the plate? These guys throw 90, they're in the upper 90s, and you're going to bring them up as fire pitchers. And when they're thrown out playing like that, that's a big deal. I think they come to some kind of an agreement. The question is, will an owner disregard the medical staff and say we're good to go? The other thing is, if he's already signed a 10-year deal and then they're discovering this, no organization is going to release any of this information about their inside player of anything that's happening. Like if Trout had some problem with his leg, or like even they made that big thing about his back this year. He won't be able to finish out his career. He has this huge back problem. It's detrimental to his health. Or I mean, he's young right now. So
well, financially, if you sign a guy without medical problems, you have insurance. So if he gets hurt, the insurance is going to pay him. The problem is you can't buy insurance with this pre-existing condition in there. They'll say, well, this guy's going to get injured, so we're not going to insure it. So it's a dilemma. But it's smart people are going to have to come up with something. But he's not getting $300 million.
Yeah, and listen, from the Mets' perspective, you're not getting another player like him at third base. You're basically, if you don't do the deal with him, you're either saying, I'm going to go after, a Harold Castro from Detroit, who's a free agent at third base, or I'll go after, and I'll just keep looking at Brett Beatty, who's the young kid that started to come up, and he's going to be my third baseman of the future. There's the drop off from Correa's 833 OPS to what's out there is dramatic. You got Jason Vossler, but he didn't even play. I mean, he's got 26 hits. I mean, nobody's out there consistent. What was the best was Lenny Dykstra's take on this whole thing. Everybody's favorite Twitter follow, right?
Yes.
So, Lenny Dykstra gets called out because he said, I'm not really actually impressed by his postseason OPS. And so people start calling him out, Dykstra and all this stuff. And he goes, actually, his postseason numbers are quite fine. I merely was trying to call attention to my own 1.094 postseason OPS.
Yeah, the one
Lenny Dykstra weighs in on the Correa business.
The one
national treasure.
The one thing that I do love, my memory of Lenny is obviously much different than others. I think when I remember Lenny, he was a contact hitter always. He choked up on the bat as far as he could, and he was all over the plate. I mean, if you wanted to talk about somebody who his face was over the plate when he would bat, he got so far in there with his front leg, and he just choked up, and all I wanted to do is make contact. He was not, if he got a home run, he got all of it, but he was about putting the ball in play and then making things happen with his legs. He was a joy to watch, and he just battled. And today's
did we talk about his most recent injury?
No, probably.
Yeah, he was asked to light the Hanukkah candle for a Jewish gathering, and Lenny Dykstra is not Jewish, and so he climbed the ladder to light the menorah and fell off the ladder and broke his heel in 3 places, falling off the ladder. And he keeps referencing on Twitter the fact that this was the heel that stole 105 bases in one season in the minor leagues, and nobody's going after the ladder for assault. So he's talk about in your face. He got in the face of the menorah and got slapped right down the ladder.
Well, it would be interesting to see where this ends up with the Mets. I mean, one thing that's certain, it seems that the calmer oceans have come forward, and we have a couple signings that are a little smaller as far as just adders, like we stated. Boston added another oldie.
Well, what about the Rangers? The Rangers just came in with Evaldi.
I was going to...
Yeah.
Listen, I'm shocked by this move because, I'm shocked that he only got 2 years. I don't understand what his agent's doing. He's 32, 33, and he is a really good pitcher. I thought for sure he would go for 5-year deal. I don't understand. Texas always overpays, so shocking that they only got a 2-year deal. Wondering if he was getting desperate, as they always say, as the market goes, and you want to play, you're like, just sign me. I need to buy this house. I need to buy whatever I need to buy. I don't know what he's looking at for purchasing or what he needs, but I mean, a 2-year deal for Nathan, I think is fantastic. His stats, Todd, I don't know if you're looking at his stats right now, but his stats over the course of the last few years, he's basically been Boston's guy. His ERA's kind of itched up a little bit, but from a standpoint of innings pitched and
well, Todd, you sent us the 6 potential starters for Texas.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive, except I look at that and I say to myself, who in that list is going to stay healthy for the whole season? Yeah,
and just so everybody listening knows the list and what, this Fox Sports put this out. Your Texas Rangers potential starters are now Jacob deGrom, Martin Perez, Nathan Evaldi, John Gray, Jake Odorizzi,
like him,
and Andrew Heaney.
Those guys all had good. They all had good numbers.
They all do have good numbers. The biggest again, this is the question that I did want to ask you, and I think this is very relevant with the Rangers starting staff. When you go open the Christmas presents, you put the batteries in, and you go fly that drone, or you fly whatever you're going to fly. What's that first present that breaks? That your kid or you come crying into the house, and you got frustrated, and maybe you got a sled back in the day, and the first run you hit a rock, and your sled's gone. Which of these signings is like, and to me, I think you got 4 pitchers on the Rangers that could easily be out by spring training. The one pitcher that you want to get injured is John Gray, and he won't. John Gray will pitch all year, and he won't. And he won't pitch all year. Dad's put in baseball gum, and baseball gum for which guy you got?
Lenny Dykstra.
Oh, for Lenny. There you go, Lenny. You got my dad eating gum. Appreciate it. Much love.
I knew the Mets, the great Mets team of the mid-'80s, was done the day they traded Lenny Dykstra for Juan Samuel. That day, I wore black. Lenny Dykstra made that team go. So he went to the Phillies and won a World Series with the Phillies.
Yep.
So it is.
Oh, that's a very frustrating tale. That's for
So is that what's going to happen? I mean, like, okay, so is there a way we can pull up what is the over-under on wins now for the Texas Rangers?
That's a good one. Anybody seen that?
I could probably pull that up pretty quick.
My guess is the mid-'80s.
No.
It was 72 when they signed DeGrom.
Oh. I'm too high, huh?
No, that was when they signed him back in the day.
Yeah. This is updated on. This was updated on August 15th. That's not good.
That's way before DeGrom.
Well, I can tell you the Rangers are right behind they're tied with the Giants if you were to bet for them to go to the World Series. And they're right behind the Angels. So for those who want to throw their money away, the Angels, you can bet on them to win the World Series. That's just throw it in the toilet. They haven't even made the playoffs. And the Rangers. Boston's way higher than they should be. And rounding out the end of this is the Oakland A's, obviously. But the shocking thing is they're double. They're double what the Nationals are. And I think the Nationals and Oakland should be tied. I think you put in a buck, you get a nice, you get $100,000 on the Oakland A's.
So clearly Seattle and Houston are rated ahead of them right in their own division.
Yeah, yes. Ahead of them, Seattle is definitely up there. They're 1,600 to 1 odds for the World Series. And then Houston is the 650. They're the top. Houston, New York, the Mets are the top 3 bets.
So if they're expected at best to be at 3rd place in their division, I don't know. They got to be, projected to win 80 to 84 games or something.
Yeah, I would think that that's the case.
The best I'm seeing right now is 74.
Oh, wow.
74.5 for Texas.
I take the under.
You think they'd go lower than 74? I don't.
That staff is not going to stay. That staff will not stay healthy. There's just the whole staff is full of people who get injured. And even if they have a good run here or there, the run is just not going to be sustainable. Now, the offense, the question is, will the bats that they paid for actually come through for them? That's the biggest question.
They're plus 4,000 to win the World Series.
Yeah. Oh, they're plus 4,000.
They're plus 4,000 at. But this is our DraftKings. I don't know. Somebody subscribe and leave a comment and tell us how we can get some decent odds here.
The best one. If I was going to go odds maker as swing batter, if I was going to put some money down, Cleveland Guardians would be a good bet. They're definitely not one of the higher teams that's in the bottom end.
Yeah.
Well, to finish up with the Rangers, it seems to me like people are having a hard time telling them to be much different than the Angels. And so hard to get excited about that.
You got to give. I will give them hats off. The Rangers did not oversign. I think a 2-year deal with Nathan is a fantastic deal. I think a 1-year deal with Martin Perez is also a fantastic deal. They didn't oversign those folks like they did with John Gray, like they did with DeGrom, like they did with a couple bats last year. I mean, their payroll is high, but we knew it was going to be high. What is their projected right now? They're in the top 5 at this point, I would imagine, right?
Who's that?
The Rangers. They're not top half. They're in the top half, not top 5.
Yeah, definitely in the top half. Right now, they're looking at, they're ranked 6th. So you're right behind the Braves. You're right behind the Braves. You're looking at a potential payroll of $215 million to win 74, maybe 75 games, and finish 3rd.
And nobody even cares. They're still talking Cowboys. They're thinking the Cowboys are going to win everything.
I'm telling you, baseball has turned brutal. If you're an owner and you're sitting there and you're the Pirates or the A's, or these teams got to spend, man. Like at a certain point, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for someone to come swoop in and like buy you out? And listen, Dad, you're the underdog guy. I know you love the underdog and you love these teams that are coming from behind and they're coming to set up and win the World Series with a low payroll and that type of thing. But what do you do to compete with the Padres, the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, the Yankees? These teams are going to reduce the league naturally to something like soccer, where you've got like just basically a minor league division that calls themselves professional. What do you do?
You just got to fill up with young guys that are hungry and want to make a name for themselves, and hope that the chemistry comes together and you get magic years out of these kids, and you win. You surprise people, but those teams you're talking about that don't have a chance, their goals are different. Their goals are to maybe play 500 ball or sneak into the playoffs as a wild card. But that's different than the big payroll teams are expecting to win a World Series.
Brendan, how far are we from an owner doing something like what Elon Musk did with Twitter, where they just say, you want to know something? I'm blowing it out. I'm going to spend a certain percentage of my net worth to go in and iterate my way out of the problem. I'm going to do a bunch of short-term contracts, and I'm going to trade, and I'm going to find some way to win with the budget of this team in a way that makes it work. And I'm not loyal to any player. I'm not doing what the Braves are doing because obviously there's something going on there. But I'm going to iterate my way through this and out of this to find something that works.
I think you could, as an owner. I would love to see an ownership team go in. I mean, I'm looking at the free agent market right now, just looking at the players that are still out there. There are tons of 1, 2, 3-year deals that you could make, that you could just load up to get your team the backup that they need. I mean, there's tons of talent, and they're not old. This is not like washed up guys, but even guys that are just good and have that can help you and help your team and help your professionalism. I would love to see I understand what Steve Cohen's doing. What would be great is he backed it up with some of these 1, 2-year deals to add the depth that you need for a long season, and give you the right mesh of people, and then trade away the people that aren't working. I think the biggest thing is to have the pieces in place to say, this chemistry is not working, I need to get rid of this person or that person. What's the chemistry and the makeup of the team? I think a manager like Buck Showalter would absolutely be wonderful for something like that. When you have 4 outfielders, for instance, you're playing the hot hand. Buck likes to use that kind of thing. I think having the flavors, the different flavors that you can bring to a team's personality, that's also a big deal.
Here's the problem. Even the teams we think are under the radar that want to compete, they're spending a lot of money. How much is Seattle's payroll? Where nobody mentions Seattle. They got a good team, but I bet you their payroll is up there.
Well, they can't be the third Canadian team and expect people to talk about them.
But what's their payroll? Do you know?
Seattle's the bottom half right now. They're in the bottom half. I think what are they projected? 125, Todd? 130? They're low.
They are. They're very low. They're projected at 175.
Oh, okay.
Projected at 175, but they're in the lower half.
They made some nice moves, and they had a good year last year. They're going to be a good team.
They're gonna be a very good team. Again, I think a lot baseball has a lot to do with the chemistry and the vibe that you have. I really thought the Phillies were going to do it last year with everything that they had, the momentum they were building. It would be interesting to see how these teams build. I mean, again, the Phillies are committed to a lot of players for a long time. Mets are committed. Braves are committed. To me, there's certain players like, I mean, none of these players are gonna knock it out of the park, for instance, and like make you go over the top. But an old Nelson Cruz, is that a good bat to have? Is that a bat you want? I mean, he's old. He's been there. He's done that. Is it something you can add? There's just so many teams doing nothing, to Todd's point. If you look at the bottom of the barrel, if you go from the Washington Nationals, the Cincinnati Reds, the Kansas City Royals, Miami Marlins, Brewers, Pirates, even the Cleveland Guardians adding to Nelson Cruz, that's just a win if you have him as a DH. You play him three games a week. You're hoping to get pop out of his bat. You're not hoping to use him too much. Tampa, Baltimore, Oakland. These are teams that have not spent. Maybe they're just looking at minor league talent, but you can add Zach Greinke's 39. I know he doesn't have it. He's a 4 ERA kind of guy. Why would you sign him? But there's certain players that you could see Zach in a reliever role, like John Smoltz did for a bit. Maybe revitalize his career a little bit. I think there's options in creative thinking that just is not done. And again, it's just, there's so many internal trades and dialogues in these sports. There's not a lot of out-of-the-box thinking. And when there is, everyone frowns upon it. So,
well, the Yankees just traded Lucas Luetge, 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 to the Braves for 2 minor leaguers. So the Braves pick up a guy who had an ERA last year of 2.67 as a reliever, 57 innings pitched and 60 strikeouts with a 1.39 whip, and they picked him up for chump change.
Nothing.
Why'd the Yankees let him go? They haven't got any room for him?
Probably looking to go younger, dumping salary maybe.
I don't know this guy at all. Is he a lefty? Pitching to lefties?
He is a lefty. Yep.
Oh.
Like guys to me that I think are just that little piece that can help you in the playoffs. Juan Segura, he's sitting out there, 33 years old, just was on the Phillies, contact hitter, brings a lot of good, a lot of professionalism. He's played for a lot of teams. He's there. He does the things that you want him to do. I think he would be a great signing. Again,
Can he play third base for the Mets?
I don't think he could throw that far. Profar from the Padres, he was playing for the Padres. He's not terrible. He's got a good bat. He can steal. He can play. He plays outfield. Tommy.
He was a pain in the playoffs.
There are people that just, again, they're just players that can add value. The thing about David Peralta played for the Diamondbacks with all the shift. I know he's older. He's 35, but he's left-handed. And without the shift, the left-handed bat is more important today than it was before. He would be a great DH add. He would be a great add to a team. And the thing is, when you look at a player like that and you're looking at the Pirates or Kansas City, these teams are not doing anything. Their minors aren't loaded. They're not doing a whole lot. The Dodgers haven't done a whole lot. They could sign a couple of these guys, no big deal, no skin off their back. This is like $25 million on the year. You sign a couple of these guys. I love, in business, you can wear people out. You can give them 3 years. You can work them like crazy. In sports, I think you could do the same thing, but a lot of these athletes are like, I'm looking for longevity. I know how to pace myself. I know how to play and do a pace of play. I think we're in a different time zone, especially when these professional players look at it. You got to find the hungry guys. Like, for instance, Luke Vogt. He's out there. He went here, he went there. He's 31. He hasn't been that good. It's just, these are guys, Johnny Cueto. These are folks.
Listen, The big surprise in 2023 is going to be, with the bases being 4 inches bigger, I think, something like that. The big surprise in 2023 is speed, returning to baseball. Returning to baseball.
One other thing, too.
In a big way.
Not just that. You only have 2 pickoffs, if I remember correctly.
You only get 2 pickoffs. Yeah.
So
use those up.
And a reliever,
right?
Relievers are the worst. You bring in a reliever and they have to face 3 batters and you only get 2 pickoff moves. This is why Segura to me is a big signing. He is smart. He is fast.
Yes.
He would probably steal 40 bases for you next year. Because, again, the other thing is infield hits. How many times are you seeing players that are out by a millimeter? Infield hits, beating out the throw. This is going to be a thing. The base is a little bit bigger. I totally agree. I think that's why, like, a guy, again, if you're looking at the guy.
Listen to this stat, right? Listen to this stat and tell me how much more exciting baseball is going to be if this type of baseball comes back, right? So look at this stat. This is from Codified Baseball, at Codified Baseball on Twitter. Jorge Mateo led the American League this year in stolen bases. In 2022, he had 35 stolen bases. Led the American League. Ricky Henderson stole 36 bases in a 30-game stretch in 1983. I would love to see the next Ricky Henderson.
Well, I think that we're going to go back to more stolen bases, and the really fast guys are going to do 50, 60 this year. I don't know if there's 100 out there, but I think running is going to, and I like that. I like to see that happen to the game. I think that brings some excitement, because what's happened that I've been troubled with is there's been such an emphasis on wait for the 3-run homer that these guys come up and they're all trying to hit 3-run homers and they strike out or they hit a home run, and that's the end of the game. And we're not moving the runners around. We're not, the left-handers can't get a single anymore because of the shift. Getting rid of the shift and putting running back in the game, I think, is going to make it more interesting. Hopefully it'll be a little faster, but I think the games, I'm hoping that it'll be more interesting.
You could make the argument that's what killed the Phillies in the World Series, was just trying too much for the long ball. If they'd have just made contact, it would to watch. If they'd have just made contact, it would have been. It's so much different. They could have used Lenny Dykstra.
Yeah, the contact hitter. I've been watching baseball a lot, but the last few years I've been so frustrated with you get a man on to third with less than 2 outs and they can't get him in. In old time baseball, that was, you get that guy in. Okay, you don't strike out. You put the ball in play, make the defense make a play, and you get the guy in somehow. But they're all.
Can we run a squeeze play, please?
I don't even know if most of these guys even can bunt anymore.
Yeah, I think when the things that are shocking to me is guys like Gary Sanchez, who was once touted by the Yankees as the man who's just sitting out there and nobody wants him. Again, there's people out there that are interesting to me because they're right in that age where it's like they had this potential and they just never lived up to it. I would love to see more contact hitting. I would love to see more speed. The Mookie Wilsons would never be in the league today. No power, speed only, contact hitting.
They changed baseball so much. They realized that to get home runs, you could get a Chris Davis or a Joey Gallo, who was a terrible hitter, but they hit 40 or 50 home runs and they make a ton of money. So what they did is they taught the batters to swing in an uppercut, to put the ball up in the air, and maybe you can drive it out of the ballpark. And so all that did was it led to more homers and a lot more strikeouts, and nobody getting contact anymore. There's a lot of pop-ups, and it's just very frustrating to watch that game. Yeah, I
know the perfect player to lead this change. Brandon Nimmo.
All right. Get an end with Nimmo.
That's why
he's going to do it.
That's why he got all the money. He's
going to do it.
Cohen's playing.
Put the ball in play. I like him. Just put the ball in play. I saw a flashback. I don't have numbers in front of me. there was an old-time player named Nellie Fox. He played second base. Short little guy with a huge chaw of tobacco in his mouth. For the White Sox, I mean, his numbers are absurd. He batted like, I'm making this up, but like 10,000 times and struck out 200 times. He never struck out. He would ground out, he'd pop out, he'd hit a liner, but he put the bat. Tony Gwynn, the same thing. They don't strike out. And those guys give you runs. Maybe they don't drive them in, but they move the runners over. They make the defense make plays. I'm longing to see that kind of baseball come back.
So I will tell you, if we're bringing back anybody like Ricky Henderson, just so you know in reference, Ricky Henderson in 1998, at the ripe old age of 39 for the A's, stole 66 stolen bases. 66 at 39 years old. Played until he was 44 for, obviously, again, at 41, he stole 36 bases, which is obscene today. That's crazy numbers.
He would have led the AL.
Oh, absolutely. And again, he's a contact hitter. That's what he was. And he had a very long career for it. I would love to see those players coming back. I mean, again, I understand the home run ball brings in a lot of dough. Everyone likes to watch it, but man, chaos on the field. When you can create chaos on the field and have players running all over the place, I think that's a good thing too.
I know we got to get going, but I'm friends with a major league catcher, a retired catcher. And he told me when Ricky Henderson came at the bat, he was always talking to himself. You know, a pitch would come in and he would take it. He'd go, Ricky don't like that. Ricky don't like that pitch. And then he'd swing and miss and he'd talk to his bat. He said, what are you doing? You're supposed to be hitting the ball. And talking constantly. Never learned anybody's name. He called everybody in the majors buddy.
I love it.
But he was a phenomenal player. My gosh. If I was going to build a team, I'd love to have Ricky Henderson leading off any day of the week.
Absolutely.
And my second at bat would be Lenny.
That'd be
now you would, and then your coach, you'd need an assistant coach that was a psychotherapist for the rest of the team to deal with the two lunatics. But God, you would have second and third all day.
Oh man,
just put them in their own dugout. but boy, they'd give you runs. Yep,
tons of runs. All right, so I don't think we're going to get 10 players above 100 million, but we'll see where it tunes out. But it's certainly mellowing. The money is definitely mellowing. That is for sure in this offseason. And I don't see it picking up anytime soon. I believe we are, 2 months away before the pitchers and catchers report?
Oh, we're entering the desert.
February, yeah. It's we're there. We're there maybe a month and a half for pitchers and catchers.
So
yeah, 7 weeks.
Being that we're in Arizona, we like to follow some swing batters. The Texas Rangers do have spring training here. I think we should go to the stadium to see how these 6 pitchers are doing. And we might as well just say which one is going to get hurt, just like during warm-ups of spring training, pitchers and catchers reporting.
We should pick one player that we're going to cheer for and can't be on our favorite teams. Just one player, obscure, that we're going to cheer for all year long.
So the highest paid Oakland A player?
Yeah, might be it.
Basically.
Or the highest paid Baltimore Oriole player? Who has to play. Man. We can't talk about salaries that are deferred. Has to be a player played. All right, in closing thoughts for this evening and for our podcast, Dad, what would you have for us?
Let's bring baseball back. This sport that only plays once a week. What a bunch of lazy guys. I want a sport that plays every day. So let's get the lazy bums off that 100-yard field. And, football is just commercials with football in between the commercials. But let's get back to baseball where we can have a 23-inning game someday.
Very good. Todd, closing thoughts?
Under the tree at Christmas, we all were given a gift by Steve Cohen, and it was Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa went to go, and we opened the package, and we had to check, but because it looked like we had a used present, and this used present might have to get returned because, well, maybe there's a little bit of damage under the skin. I got to tell you something. I hope we don't have to. I hope we can work something out because that lineup looks really great with him in it. So don't return the present, but keep the receipt, baby.
I think him in the Mets lineup would be very, very lethal. I will close this thought out with listening to Deion Sanders in an interview this week. They asked him what sport was most challenging, and he said to this day, baseball is the hardest sport in the world. They asked why he kept playing it. He said, listen, you do something 30%, you're considered great. That's an unbelievable sport. Hitting that baseball is one of the hardest things you can do. He said football was easy. Football was easy. My God-given abilities, I don't need to look at plays. I don't need to look at this. I could just go out there and play. Now, he is an incredible talent. But the fact that Deion was a two-sport athlete, and again, Bo Jackson as well. Baseball humbles you. Baseball is difficult. These players that are out there giving it their all, I look forward to it every year. I think I look forward to what's coming and how these players are able to produce. And it's certainly going to be exciting this year, that's for sure. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Todd.
Gotta go. Yep.
Guys, love you.
Much love.